All right, all right. Welcome to another episode of The Impact Factor. I am actually unbelievably excited about the guest that I have on today. I have Fraser Bayley. This guy, elite level concierge nutrition fanatic. He uses advanced testing tools to reverse engineer superhuman protocols to help you create the 2.0 version of you. Pretty cool. Proud husband, proud father, student and teacher. He's worked with some of the top guys from former Special Forces SEALs, Rangers, Green Berets, all the way through to entrepreneurs, business owners. He's worked with professionals and famous people like Chris Daughtry, who I know is a good friend of yours.
Yeah.
Very much into charity, massive fascination for all things psychological and health related, from New Zealand, lives in the Smoky Mountains of Tennessee right now, and as of last year, officially a U.S. citizen. And I don't know if you're not watching this, if you can only listen to the podcast and you can't see what this guy looks like. Picture a Greek god. This guy's got an crazy. He's got the body that everybody wants. Excited to have him on here today. So welcome.
Dude, thank you so much for the introduction, man. I'm honored and I'm excited to dive into all this stuff. I know you're fascinated with health stuff as well. There's a lot of overlap with us being fathers, husbands. So, man, I'm just excited to share all of that with you, but like also your audience and just give the people listening some really useful tactics and tools to go away with and make themselves better. So let's dive in, man.
Absolutely. I'm excited to dive in. So why don't we just start off? Why don't you just tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously you did a really good job sort of starting me off there. I almost feel like that pretty much summed everything up. But so I'm from New Zealand originally. Been in the US now for 12 years. Like you mentioned, US citizenship last year, which was a really cool moment for me and like a proud moment in the sense that I understand the sort of foundation of why this country was established, and I really enjoy, I value those principles. And we're in the beautiful Smoky Mountains. I mean, it's just picturesque. Um, we have some land here that we're going to be building some a house on, so I'm excited to do that with my family. And I have a young daughter, Zia. She's 5 years old. My wife, Lauren. And so, put it this way, man. Like my life was very, very different 20 plus years ago. So I'm going to be 40 in November. And through my teens, starting early, about 11 or 12, I was diagnosed with bipolar depression, severe social anxiety, and ADHD. And back then, it wasn't as common. Now a lot of people have ADHD diagnosis, a lot of people have diagnosis for a lot of things. Back then, this was not common. So I was really an odd one out in a lot of ways. And I was on a range of medications over about a 10-year period. So from about 11 years old all the way through to about 20 years old, I was on a raft of psychiatric medications, trying different things. I went to psychiatrists many times. There was so much stuff I was trying to do. And I had a really challenging childhood in the sense that, with these learning disabilities, and having my parents separate when I was 5 years old, and then just living in that split household, and not really having like what was modeled to me like a normal childhood. I feel like that, in conjunction with the learning disabilities and everything else, dude, it just sets you up to not be very effective at school, at the conventional system, right? And I've noticed this with a lot of entrepreneurs is that they tend to, have these what are called disabilities, but I often think they're almost like a superpower. So I want to talk more about that. But all this to say, I went through this whole period in my teens, um, struggled at school. I was the kid that was getting D's and C's for achievement, but I was getting A's and B's for effort, which was more embarrassing because it's like you're actually trying and you're stupid. So that's what I felt like back then. I was like, I'm trying and I'm stupid. Like, what the hell? Like this is just, maybe I should just drop this, quit. This is not something that I'm cut out for. Just get into the blue collar industry and just start making money that way. And so I left school at 15 years old. and I went to work in a butchery. So I was working in the butchery part-time after school cleaning up. And kind of at the time, it was like the path of least resistance. I was just like, you know what? I've already got a part-time job here. I'm just going to fall into this and do this full time. There was no plan. There was no strategy. There was no what I want to do when I grow up. And I just started working there full time as an apprentice. So I was basically going through a 3 to 4 year apprenticeship to get qualified as a butcher. And I thought to myself, at least I'll have some type of qualification and a trade. What I didn't know, no, what I didn't know was that putting myself in an environment like that was just going to fuel and magnify my mental health issues even more. Um, I've got a range of mental health issues in my whole family. There's people in my family that ranging from schizophrenia to bipolar depression to OCD, alcoholism. So it's definitely sort of in the genetic coding, so to speak. So me putting myself into an environment like a butchery where there's like an alpha male wolf pack, so everyone is kind of like jostling for that top spot. I'll find a lot of blue collar trades tend to be that way. And it was like putting jet fuel on a house fire, basically. So the alcoholism, the drug use just kind of compounded on top of the existing issues. And I found that I just was down a really bad path, man. Like I was a completely different person than I am today. I smoke, I drank, I did drugs, I sold drugs. A lot of people that were in my ecosystem back then now have spent decades in prison or they're dead. I mean, it was literally like that type of environment. And I look back now and I'm like, man, I don't know if it's just like divine intervention, God, whatever, but somehow I managed to maneuver my way through all those twists and turns and still come out the other side of that intact. And I've been through a lot of stuff, man, and like from you know overdose, suicide attempts. So there was a lot of like very heavy stuff early on in my teens, and I didn't have the tools. I didn't have the coping tools. I didn't have the mechanisms. I didn't understand all the stuff that we're going to be talking about in this conversation that that helps me to this day. And so at a certain point, I was waking up in the morning and my alarm would go off to go to work and I would just start crying. I was like, man, I cannot see myself doing this job for another year. If I thought to myself, I don't even think I'll be alive if I'm in this a year from now. And so I thought to myself, I've got to change something. I've got to change something. And so that day, I wrote out a resignation letter. I did it the way that, in hindsight, I shouldn't have done. I didn't give them any notice. So I basically just walked out. And in hindsight, to me, where I am now with my sort of moral code, it would have been the respectable thing to do to give them like notice, let them know, do my 2 weeks so they can find someone else to fill in for me. So I'm not putting like, more pressure on everyone else. But I just could not handle the idea of being in that environment, everyone knowing that I'm leaving, because that's when I would have been victimized more. I mean, there was like fist fights in there. There was a lot of stuff. So I left, and that's when I actually came back home. So I left home when I was young, and my dad basically knew that I needed help. And so he sort of brought me back in. And this was really what I sort of consider the start of my monk mode, or like the sort of inward journey where basically I gave myself a lifectomy, where I just removed all these old people, all these old things. I got a little dog, little fox terrier, and I basically just kind of like kept to myself because I'd been through so much drama and challenges. I was like, I'm so tired of it. So one of the things that I did do in conjunction with this when I was about 20 years old was I started to go get therapy. And through that psychotherapy, that's when my therapist at the time, Frank Hayes, mentioned to me, he's like, you should maybe try working out. I'd never worked out before. And back then, we didn't have YouTube and all these platforms that are, it was in its early stages. It's not like now where you can just go online, find all the workouts, go watch all the best inspiration on YouTube. It was in its infancy. So if you didn't know someone that had the result that you wanted, or you didn't have like a book from the library, it was not just easy to find information and teachers and mentors. So I didn't know that working out could affect your brain chemistry and your mood. I didn't know any of these things. It was all foreign to me. My diet was terrible. Just straight up trash. I mean, there was no thought at all to like what I ate. It was just pizzas, just pure junk. And so when he suggested this to me, I thought to myself, well, what have I got to lose? He's been right about a few other things in my life. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. I'll go and I'll just start and see what happens. And dude, I tell you, that was kind of the start of the journey where when I started to do that, I was like, wow, man, like this is something that I can control. You know, this is something that I can channel my anxiety into. I can channel a lot of fear and doubt into this and see like a tangible return. Like if I put in enough effort, I can literally see it coming back out. And it's a longer term play. So it's not like something that you just do once and then you see the results. You've got to cultivate that discipline and that foundation and that patience. And so over time, I started to notice that as a byproduct of going to the gym in the morning early, I started to get these new social circles. So basically, when I sort of gave myself that lifectomy, it was in conjunction with going to the gym in the morning, spending more time with people who go to the gym in the morning, typically guys in their 30s and 40s, fathers, business owners. So I was this young guy without kids, without a partner, in an environment with guys who had families and businesses. So it was almost like the perfect mastermind. I didn't know it at the time. I was like oblivious to any of this stuff. But in hindsight, I'm like, man, that was like a mastermind basically. And I started to get more and more into this stuff. And I done some like I created a charity event thing where I did like an unofficial world record on leg press for 14 hours. We raised some money. I wanted to channel what I'd been through into something meaningful. And so the next step in that evolution was I was like, well, you know, I love this stuff. Why don't I go and at least get some type of degree or certification in something relating to this? Because this is something that I enjoy. And so that's when I went back to college to study nutrition and human structure and function, which is a bit like physiology. And dude, the rest in many ways is history. So that kind of opened the door for me to learn more and more and more about the human body, the mind, the connection between the two, all that stuff. And as a byproduct of being in that space, learning that stuff, I was in a couple of online groups on Facebook. This is early on when Facebook had a lot of interaction in groups. And there was this fitness group and it was sort of relating to fitness professionals, people who either be dietitians, nutritionists, personal trainers, all kind of getting together and sort of masterminding or brainstorming business stuff. And that's actually where I met my wife, Lauren. So I met her in this group. And at first, we were just talking and I just kind of connected, throwing ideas back and forth. And what I found was we just had this connection. You know, there was something more. And I felt like I asked myself this question, man. I was like, could I see myself when I'm 80 years old, sitting in my rocking chair, reminiscing and wondering, what if? Like, what if I went there and it does work? And it's those what ifs that would haunt me personally. Like, you know, thinking back, oh man, I had that opportunity. Oh man, there was that person I should have spoken to and I didn't. And I thought to myself, I literally really don't have anything to lose. But I have so much I can potentially gain. And so, dude, even dealing with all the anxiety and all the challenges that I'd gone through, I'd weaned myself off all my medications at that point. So I was facing everything full on, like the natural way. And so after having panic attacks in public and on a bus, I then got on a jumbo jet and flew 8,000 miles to the US by myself, having been through all of that. Because I thought to myself, I do not want to be that guy 80 years old on the rocking chair with regret, wondering what if. And dude, it worked out. It actually worked out. So like now we're 12 years married and we have a 5-year-old daughter. And I feel like that really propelled me into a different place because I came over here. And for anyone that's ever like left their hometown, even a country, in many ways you get almost reinvent yourself. And you get to go to a new place. You really feel like you can reinvent the person that you are. And no, dude, I mean, I really took advantage of that. So I was this new person on the block, and I feel like my fascination with health just went, it just grew more and more and more because I wanted to solve my own problems first. One of the biggest reasons why I had a fascination with like blood work and brain chemistry and hormone systems and gut health and all these things is because I had all of those issues and I didn't feel good. I was working out, but I would get tired a lot. So even though I was kind of in shape, I would get tired all the time. I'd need to take naps every day. I felt like my skin wasn't very good. I used to get breakout and like pimples and rashes. My digestion wasn't very good, so I'd often feel quite bloated. There was lots of things, man, that just didn't feel right, even though I was more and more and more into the health space. And that's really that path of self-discovery where I really dug into, what's happening in the gut, what's happening with the hormone systems, what's happening with inflammation in your body. How do you understand the mechanisms around how the brain actually works on a chemical level and the relationship between that and your body and like food and the relationship between food and like how you can alter your state using food and all these different concepts. And so I just got really, really tenacious with learning this stuff. And I feel like it's like anything. I feel like if you're a fanatic about it and you have a massive passion for it, it's almost like the cream rises to the top in the sense that I'd solve my problems so aggressively and people could see it. And they were like, show me how you did that. How did you go from being diagnosed with all these things, medicated, all these challenges to like where you are now? I want to learn that. And obviously I want to get in shape too. And so I started to teach people. And as I started to teach people, man, early on it was just like your average people. But it's almost like you get more recognition, like people notice. And so all the way to the point now, like you mentioned at the start, having worked with guys like musician Chris Daltrey, former American Idol guy, like we're close friends now. I'm literally prepping him right now for a muscle and fitness shoot tomorrow. So like I'm in the depths of it with him today. And guys like former SEALs, Army Rangers, Green Beret, attorneys, veterinarians, corporate bankers on Wall Street, like a really wide range of people, but all people that are like high ambitious achievers in different industries and especially in entrepreneurship too. So I found, man, long story short, that it's got to this point now where it's really about like taking that person and then finding what is the blueprint to get them to that 2.0 version of themselves. And so it's been a wild ride, man. It's been a real journey. And like anything, there's been a lot of self-discovery, there's been a lot of challenges, but I look back and I'm like, man, I had to go through all those things to recognize that I had a range of problems to solve them, to figure them out of myself, and then to be able to teach other people how to do the same. So and so to this point now, man, we work remotely. I have people come for like private days with me from different states. Um, I work with people from all different states, like online. I mean, you'd be amazed, like now with the technology we have, like what we can do, and get people really good results remotely. So, dude, it's been a journey, man, and that's pretty much like the whole sort of summary of the at least the overview of everything.
Dude, I love it, man. You and I met, I don't know, I kind of lose track of time at this point, but 2, 3, 4 years ago. I don't remember
Yeah.
exactly when. Let's just say within the last few years.
Mhm.
And I was instantly fascinated by the things you were talking about because while everyone was sort of talking about one thing, whether it was business or real estate or whatever the topic was that we were talking about in the group that we were in, you were talking about what you talk about, which is, being a better version of yourself, having more energy, feeling better, because feeling better will help you live better and work better and be a better uh, friend and father and husband and all the things that you do. And of course, everything that we were talking about sort of stems from a foundation, which is kind of what
Mhm.
you're talking about, is the foundation of what goes on in your body affects your mind, it affects how you feel, it affects how you act and work and all the other things. And you talked about, helping to create that 2.0 version for yourself. I remember you talking about blood markers and the things that you look at with blood markers. And I remember you talking about energy levels and diet and nutrition and workout and routine and mindset and all of these things, and exercise and how that plays and time commitment, just like all these different things that you were talking about. I was so fascinated by it because like we should all want to know about that stuff, but nobody's talking about it, at least not in the circles I was in, maybe a little more so now than before, but not in the circles I was in. People weren't talking about that stuff. We were just grinding. We were working as hard as we can. And just like you didn't have time for all this stuff. So, I would love for you to talk about all of that type of stuff, 2.0
Yeah.
version, all the things I mentioned, and, share the secret.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's exactly what you said. Is like guys in the entrepreneurial space and the business development space, whatever niche you're in, they know all their numbers. Like they know their KPIs and the ROIs and the numbers, percentages when it comes to different deals. Especially the real estate guys. And yet, then if you ask them about their numbers when it comes to their health, it's like a blank stare, right? So they know all their numbers when it comes to the things that they're really good at, and that's partly why they're good at them. But then when it comes to the health stuff, you ask them, okay, what's your hemoglobin A1C or what's your C-reactive protein score? And they're like, they don't even know what you're talking about. So part of it is education around understanding that this stuff isn't just for like insurance purposes. So a lot of people, I think they maybe think that, okay, blood work, that type of thing, I only need that if I'm just going to do a life insurance policy or something. I only need that if I need insurance, or my annual checkup with my doctor or whatever. But what I tell people is that stuff is almost like it's like a roadmap. So like if you were to get like a fully comprehensive blood panel done, right? And then you were to stack that with say like a food sensitivity test and maybe a hair mineral analysis. You could take those three tests and you could pretty much engineer the perfect dietary protocol and supplementation to fix all those little problems that you've got that affect how you feel. And so one of the things that I tell people when it comes to blood work or testing is that you got to understand this idea of biofeedback. And this was really big for me because obviously when I had a lot of mental health issues, you don't feel very good. Your energy is very low. You don't feel very good. You feel very lethargic. You're getting sleepy all the time. And I basically knew that I had to um, understand what my body was trying to tell me. So what is it trying to say to me? So some examples would be if you eat something and you get digestive issues, if you get bloating, gas, discomfort, or you get reflux, or you eat something and then you notice that you start getting a rash or pimples like a few days later, or maybe you don't sleep very well, or you notice that you're getting brain fog at a certain point during the day and you just kind of feel foggy and, distracted. These are biofeedback cues. And that's again why a lot of people in the morning will use a lot of caffeine because they feel tired. They don't feel rested. They don't feel like they slept well. So they wake up and they're like, oh man, I feel destroyed. And so they grab a lot of caffeine to almost blunt that signal, to basically ignore the signal rather than try to determine, okay, what's going on here internally that's driving some of these messages. And so another common one is cravings. Like a lot of women, for example, will get cravings for chocolate at certain points in their menstrual cycle. And part of that is magnesium and iron loss from blood loss. And so your body's a smart thing, man. And it knows that something is being depleted and it will send a signal for that thing. And it's the same thing with like, so if you're craving salty food, it's usually because you've been sweating a lot and you lost a lot of sodium. So what most people do is they just listen to the signal and they just grab the first thing that their emotional brain kind of tells them. When in actuality, if you were able to kind of understand what your body's trying to tell you, you can add things in intentionally and basically nullify all the negative signals where you have good energy all day. You have no digestive issues. You have no cravings. I don't even get cravings. I don't get any cravings. Like, I mean, I get hungry, but there's a difference between hunger and cravings. And so it's one of these things, man, where when you can take like detailed blood work that's going to look at, say, your thyroid metabolism or your sex hormones like testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, DHEA, things like that, you can create protocols. And so part of it was like that was sort of what I did to fix myself. So when I got off all my psych meds, I did a test that's online, you can do it online. It's called the Braverman test. So I did this Braverman test, and what it is, man, is it's like an approximation for your brain chemistry. So it gives you a bunch of subjective questions to ask, and it will say, okay, based on these questions and these responses, you have approximately, this much GABA, acetylcholine, dopamine, and serotonin. And one of the things that I found was that as I got off my psych meds, I had to understand what was happening chemically in here, because that's usually when things go wrong. That's usually when people like really crash, or their anxiety goes through the roof, or whatever it is. And part of it, and I've noticed this with a lot of entrepreneurs, when they do the Braverman test, they tend to be acetylcholine dominant. So acetylcholine is a bit like the accelerator of the brain. Think of the brain like an engine, and acetylcholine is the accelerator, and GABA is the brake. And so most people are just pedal to the metal, full tilt on the accelerator. And what that does is it gets you going. Like, you move fast, you think, you get a lot done, like you're sort of rushing, basically, that sort of rushed energy. But it usually generates anxiety. So if you have a lot of acetylcholine where your just foot is on the floor, you're going to have that rushed energy, usually elevations in heart rate. The person will usually speak really fast all the time, and they don't have enough braking system. And so the brake is basically what puts you into flow state. So like, or the combination of the two. So like, if you've ever been in like flow state before, where you're sort of in this groove where everything's just kind of coming out and it just feels effortless. A lot of people will get into flow state when they play certain sports, for example.
Yeah, when you
Um,
run, I used to get it when I would run long distances. Once I got past like
exactly.
5 or 6 miles, you start feeling it.
Yep. So that's that sensation. And what it is, it's like the perfect chemical cocktail of acetylcholine, GABA, dopamine, and serotonin. And so I started to ask myself, okay, if the mind is like a chemical factory and you pull a lever and it produces acetylcholine, and you pull a lever and it produces GABA, and you can change things, what do I need to do in my diet and my supplementation to get this thing like operating like a Formula One race car? And through obviously trial and error and experimentation and learning this stuff, I was able to do that, where I can get up at 3:30 in the morning and go all day long without crashing, without taking any more than about 100 milligrams of caffeine in the morning. There's no cravings. It's like I have like a clear head all day, and I'm not even exaggerating that. It's taken quite a long time to get to this point. I don't think it would take someone else a long time to get here now that I know like what to do, but I had to kind of like stumble forward and try all kinds of random stuff, and it didn't work and it did work. But the point being is that your brain chemistry is like one system in your body that has a massive effect on how you feel. And then the other systems are like your hormonal system. So, for women, it's going to be your estrogen, progesterone, testosterone ratio. For men, it's typically going to be the same. Like, men obviously still need estrogen, for example. So there are hormonal systems, and those hormonal systems also drive how you feel. Like, if you are feeling really low and your mood is low and your libido is low, you might have like a depletion of a lot of hormones. And so that's another component. And then there's obviously thyroid, which is like the thermostat of your body. And so if you can look at all your numbers, you can then figure out, what do I need to add in like for foods. I'll get an example. So if someone's thyroid was slow, and thus it's kind of down regulating their metabolism, so their hair is kind of dry, their nails and skin are kind of dry, typical things that you see with like a dysregulated thyroid. A lot of women will experience this. Digestion might be kind of slow, so you get bloated a bit easier, you feel just low energy, you get cold more. It's harder to lose weight, like your body doesn't seem to respond to fat loss like you think it should. In that instance, if you get like your TSH checked, like your thyroid stimulating hormone, and you can go, oh wow, that's low, then you know that, say for example, iodine helps stimulate thyroid stimulating hormone. So then you'd ask yourself, okay, well, what has iodine in it? So seaweed, for example, like sushi rolls. So you know that there's naturally occurring iodine in the seaweed that comes in sushi rolls. So in that instance, I might say, okay, well, for that person, do a little bit of sushi every day with or do the nori sheets, like the seaweed crackers. or you could do some iodized table salt on one of your meals. So, and then what that does is you get that food, you get that component, and it literally increases or improves that number, and that improves the whole system. So, when you understand how to do that with the brain stuff, with the hormone stuff, with the gut stuff, and with your immune system and the way that you recover and your sleep, and your immune system and sleep are kind of tied together. When you know how to do that for each system, dude, and it's actually very simple too. One of the beautiful things is this sounds complicated. Like you hear it and you're like, wow, like how am I ever meant to figure this out? But it's actually very simple in practice. So once you know what to do, the execution of it is not hard. So a good example is, the musician Chris Daltrey, right? So he's busy, he's always traveling. If he's not on tour, he's like traveling for interviews, appearances, you name it. So he's not in a little controlled bubble at home where he's got a little chef waiting for him and he's got everything perfect. He's on the road, he's on tour buses, he's like, in every environment you can imagine. And he's still able to do these things because it's that simple. So the point is, like, I always tell people, don't let what seems like to be complex science deter you from the idea that you can do this in any environment if you're on the road traveling or not. And so for a lot of busy entrepreneurs and those types of people, I know that can be a rate limiting factor. People are like, oh, I'm traveling a lot. And I'm like, well, my whole mentality is like, master those skills while you're traveling, because then when you're in any situation, it's going to be a walk in the park. So I think the biggest things, man, is like, it's kind of like you were saying at the start, it's more than just in this health space, it's more than just having abs and being jacked. Like that's a byproduct. Like I share my physique, but it's more to kind of like help people realize that I do have the result that they want. What I actually want to teach people and what I actually want to show them is all this internal stuff, because people aren't striving to get jacked and have abs. Like they do it because of how they think it's going to make them feel. They think, okay, I'm going to feel real confident. I'm going to go up on stage and speak, and I'm going to be real confident. I'm going to be able to take pictures at the beach with my wife and kids, and I'm not going to have to hide behind like a polo shirt. I'm going to, just that idea of like peace and confidence and what that means as like a leader. And so I tell a lot of guys, I'm like, do this for like your brand, even. Obviously do it for like your own fulfillment, your own happiness. Do it for your family to be like a really good role model for your kids, but do it for your brand. Like if you have a brand, like nothing's more appealing than a guy who's like got the business stuff locked down. He's got a good connection with his wife and kids, and then he's like in great shape too, and he's like he's vital. And that's one of the things that I noticed in the fitness space is that they focus on just the aesthetics, but they don't focus on the internal stuff. So you have a lot of guys in the fitness space that are like pumped to the brim. And again, I don't care what other people do with their body. Like, if someone wants to take copious amounts of anabolic steroids and do all this stuff, knock yourself out. But the reality is that that is not going to make you feel good. Like you might look a certain way, but you will feel terrible. And so I noticed that in the health space in general, and what a lot of people were pursuing was just the shell. They weren't understanding that you can have both, but you need to solve problems in the right order. And that's why a lot of what I teach is kind of different. So one of the core concepts that I think would be useful for the listeners, even yourself, man, is like I use this concept called eat the rainbow, where with your lunches and dinner meals, right? Ask yourself when you're looking at that meal, where's my green food? Where's my red food? And where's my orange? Why do the colors matter? And usually it's going to be like a vegetable of some sort. So it's going to be like, microgreens or, salad greens, broccoli, green. It's going to be red peppers, beets, tomatoes, red. It's going to be carrots or orange peppers or something like that.
So it's not like a red velvet donut. That wouldn't count.
No, no. Yeah, that would not count, unfortunately. But one of the things that I say, and again, simple, almost like a babyish concept, like eat the rainbow. But that's the whole point of like taking these complicated systems and making very, very simple rules of thumb where I'm like, did you eat the rainbow today? To one of my students, for example, and they'll send me the picture and it might be like their meal and they've got like, this stir fry mix. And the reason why I say this because a lot of people will overlook this. They'll just focus on calories, they'll just focus on protein, carbs, and fats, right? The reason why I say this is because different colored foods have different levels of pigment because of the types of vitamins and minerals they have in the food. So the pigment changes based on the concentration of a certain vitamin or mineral. So an example would be like carrots, high in beta carotene. That's why they are orange. So my whole thing was like, I'm like, So what I want to do is if I track my calories for 5 days on my Fitness Pal or chronometer or whatever it is, and I get that overview of each day, and I can see where all my micronutrients are. So like my iron levels, my selenium, my magnesium, my omega-3s, all the different levels of each thing. I can then see what I'm falling short on. So where am I falling short? And then I plug those holes with a specific food. Like you could go to ChatGPT and literally insert healthy food high in selenium, healthy food high in boron, healthy food high in vitamin B12. And you literally take that and you plug all the holes that you have in your diet.
Hold on, before you continue, where do you find out that stuff? How are you tracking that stuff?
So what you would do is this food tracking apps like MyFitnessPal
Okay.
or Chronometer. Those are the two main ones.
So it's not automatic. You're plugging stuff in. Got it.
Yeah, and that's the less accurate way to do it. So the way that I typically do it with my students is I'll get them to run a hair mineral analysis, where that you pull a piece of hair out, you send it away, and it will literally measure the concentrations of these things in your hair. So that's the very accurate way to do it. Like that way, you know exactly what is going on. Now, if you wanted to do it the more inaccurate way, but you could do it like right now, you would track on MyFitnessPal or Chronometer. So you basically just plug in all your foods for the day. I would say to do it over like a 5 day period so you can see like an average. And you would say, okay, like over that 5 day period, I can see that I was falling short on these different minerals here. And that's when you basically plug those holes. Again, that's where you would start. So, and the reason why that's important, man, is that comes back to that eat the rainbow concept of I thought to myself, what are common foods that you could add into your routine as a foundation to make sure you're plugging as many holes as you can? And so basically the way that I structure my meals is I'll have a protein, I'll have a starchy carbohydrate, and it's usually going to be like a root vegetable, like a sweet potato, a Japanese sweet potato, gold potato. It's like some type of root vegetable. I find that tends to work better on my gut than grains. So I'll use a bit of rice from time to time, but I find the root vegetables tend to work better for me. And they satiate me more too. So like I get a sense of feeling fuller, easier with that. Same calories, high level of satiety. So that's a key thing to note is like some foods will fill you up really well and some foods won't. So that satiety level is important to factor in. But then what I'll do is I'll add in my green vegetable, my red, my orange. I'll add a fermented food on top of it, like sauerkraut or kimchi, and I'll add a living food like broccoli sprouts. We'll literally sprout our own broccoli sprouts. And the reason for that, man, is because think about this. Gram for gram, calorie for calorie, broccoli sprouts have a lot more concentrated nutrients in them than like a whole head of broccoli. So the concentrations of those vitamin minerals are much higher, and they have this compound in them called sulforaphane, and it's highly anti-cancerous. So I use it almost like as an insurance policy. I mean, dude, there's so many people now that are getting cancer from environmental exposures, diet, you name it. I do not want to be a statistic. And so we take them every day as an insurance policy. I'm like, this is a no-brainer to me. So a lot of the things I put in my meals aren't like focused on calories or protein. It's other things. And dude, that's the missing piece. Like in the fitness space in general, that's missing. People are focusing on the protein, they're focusing on the carbs or the fats, they're focusing on the calories. But you can eat a pretty crappy diet focusing on those things and have terrible blood work and have all these holes missing in your micronutrient values, and you feel like low energy, you got cravings through the roof, your libido is crushed, you have brain fog, like you have all these issues. And so it's kind of like the blind leading the blind with the fitness industry. There's a lot of these guys who are sort of proponents of, if it fits your macros, like jamming sort of processed foods in there, as long as it fits your calories, which I do understand the principles around that. There's a time and place for that, but it doesn't factor into feeling optimal, man. Like you're not going to be a business athlete that way. So like my whole thing is, how do you make yourself a business athlete? I've noticed a lot of the top guys now. I mean, Jeff Bezos is a good example. So Jeff Bezos from Amazon, if you've seen pictures of him in the last few years, he's in much better shape now. He's quite athletic, and you can tell that he's got people in his corner helping him with his health. And that's that business athlete mentality, is that if you're going to be running a business, doing big deals, speaking on stage, and you want to lead and you want to grow something significant, it's going to require a level of person that currently you're probably not. And I find the rate limiting factors for people is like how much energy they have, how quickly do they burn out, how confident are they with the way they look on getting on camera and speaking. So there's all these like things that are like blocking people from making faster progress because of how they feel, their energy, their mood, their confidence. And dude, when you optimize that stuff, everything is just, it's like exponential. And so I've seen a lot of the people that I do stuff with, they'll often have a lot of business deals that move very quickly. They'll have a lot of new opportunities. A really a good example, using myself as an example, was when I went out to California last year to Hollywood to be on set with Chris Daltrey for his music video. Because I was prepping him like hour by hour. We're kind of paying attention to how his body's holding water retention, and we're manipulating everything to like the detail. And the producer of the music video, he's the guy who produced the movie Sin City, and he saw me, and he's like, "Dude, do you want to be a security guard in the music video?" And I'm like, "Really? Like you like you don't have someone?" And so it was like almost he saw me, and he was so compelled by like the way that I look. He wanted me in there. So it's just a good example of,
Yeah.
and again, I'm not like, I don't want to toot my own horn. It's more to say like, when you are ready, like a door opens and presents an opportunity, and you just like you're good to go. And I've seen that with with Chris, for example. Um, Walking him through all these processes, not only did people see him on social media posting more fitness related stuff, so then he got the muscle and fitness interview, which he's on tomorrow. So he got that because of all these things. But he's had two number one singles in the last 2 years since, and we've been working together for about 3 years. And he didn't have any number one singles for like 10 years before that. So in the space of time that he started focusing more and more on his health again, he's now more creative and producing better art. So again, whether that is directly related to what we're doing, it's hard to tell, but
No, I
it's
think you should give you all the credit for the number one videos,
dude,
right?
it's definitely, dude, it's definitely not going to hurt. I think the way I think about it is, when you have better energy and you can get into flow states more, you're more creative. And obviously music is like the total form of creative expression. And so that's just one example of that. So there's many examples of that type of thing happening. So I tell people it's like a business ROI. If you have to, if someone to get, so if someone's listening and they're an entrepreneur and they're not really in good shape and they're like, I'll just do it later on, when I have time, I would say to them, like, make that your focus, because if that's the weak link in the chain for you, that's also the area where you probably have the most like untapped potential. And if you can upsize and upskill in that area, it's going to like open doors in all these other areas of your business, in terms of like your energy levels, the way you present yourself, your confidence. That energy with your confidence is a huge part. So, man, I mean, we can go in any direction you want with this,
Yeah.
man. But like, yeah, so that's sort of like, in terms of, you said like throw stuff at you regarding testing and things.
No, I have some specific questions for you. So I'm fascinated by this stuff because I even think about myself. I work out a lot. If I'm not eating healthy, it doesn't look like I work out a lot. And so I've been trying to eat healthy more often. I might eat a salad, but then I want to have chocolate afterwards, right? I get
Yeah.
those cravings where I just want that, or I want to go out sometimes and I want to drink alcohol.
Hmm.
And I have a sweet tooth. I love dessert. I like the social aspect of going out, maybe the social aspect of drinking a little bit. I don't drink a lot, but like, I like the social aspect of that. I like the social aspect of going out for dinner. And when I go out for dinner, I like to eat dessert.
Hmm.
And I noticed with my own body, with like I for sure have gut health issues, and it runs in my family as well. And I get bloated and I don't feel great, and my energy is for sure low a lot of times. And I know certain foods do that to me. Like for
Hmm.
me personally, I know just like some things like rice,
Yeah.
bread, like those types of things really affect me a lot. But I like to eat those things.
Yeah.
So, what I think would be a good thing to kind of structure the next thing we talk about is like, I guess let's start from like some action plan, right? So if
Yeah.
somebody wanted to take the first step in getting blood work done,
Hmm.
number one, what would they, I'm going to ask a series of questions that you can
Yeah.
talk for
Sure.
a while.
Yeah.
So like what blood work would they ask for?
Sure.
Who would they ask to
Hmm.
write a prescription, and where would they get this blood work, right? And
Yeah.
then of course analyzing it, I know
Hmm.
you could do it, and maybe you can give some suggestions
Yeah.
on other stuff. And then from there, then I get, I don't know if you can give a plan of what to
Yeah.
eat. I guess you just talked about that, but I guess it's specific for everybody. And then as far as like working out, what does something like that look like? For
Hmm.
and sleeping for me, like I know I try to get 8 hours of sleep every night, 7 to 8 hours for me. Like I'm pretty good.
Yeah.
If I get below seven, I can feel it for sure. And if I get below 6 hours, I like I'm not functioning properly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think like just talking about that
Yeah.
whole
Yeah.
plan from like blood work to
Yep.
food, we talked a lot about to working
Yeah.
out to mindset, right? It's
Mhm.
mindset as well and energy level. So
Yeah, I mean, really, really good questions. So let's dive into all of that. So I think with the blood work stuff, well, the first thing that I'll say is like I have a free download called the Superhuman Blood Work Blueprint. So I'll give you that link.
yeah.
It's like a free download, and what it does is it will list out like all the different biomarkers that you could request.
Say what that is now. Let everybody know what that
So
is.
it's the Superhuman Blood Work Blueprint. So
It's
and
a
I can
website. It's
I can't remember the URL. I think it might be like uh give me 1 second.
Say it again, the superhuman.
Superhuman Blood Work Blueprint.
And if they just Google that, they'll find it.
Yeah, or they could just message me and I can send that to them. It is um a second. I had it on my phone because it's like a different URL. It's kind of confusing. It's like www.superhumansecrets.com/bloodwork hyphen blueprint. So if you can remember that, or you can just message me. I'll give you the links anyway, man,
Okay,
and
and
you
we'll
can.
put it in. We'll put it in the
Yeah.
uh,
So
down.
that would at least be like a good place to start in terms of it gives you like a full list because what you typically want to do. So first of all, you can go to like your general physician and ask them for blood work and try and get it run through insurance. Like you can do that. Usually it's like hit and miss because usually insurance want some type of disease model. They're like, oh, we want to know that this is being run because we think this person has like low testosterone or cancer or something. So if you're just like, I just want to be optimal, they don't really support people with that stuff. So it's like a sick care industry. It's not geared towards people wanting to be proactive. So you can go through insurance, but what you would want to tell your doctor is like you basically want to rattle off every ailment you can think of. So like, doc, I have this problem, this problem, this problem, and just dump them all on him to the point where he will say, oh, well, let's just write a whole script for everything. But I don't see that happen very often. What I typically see happen is they'll run through insurance. It'll be like kind of hit and miss, random things. So a lot of key things will be missing to the point where it's almost just better to go private. So you just go through a private institution. So like some of the ones that different people will go through is like Inside Tracker is one. Marek Health is another one. Thorn, the supplement company Thorn, literally has blood testing on their website. There are a lot of like longevity clinics around in general. Like if you were to, wherever city you were in, if you were to search like longevity clinic, like in your city, there will be surely some that will pop up, and you can almost certainly be able to reach out to them and they will give you like a comprehensive panel. Um, I'll usually run my stuff privately through physicians that I kind of collaborate with. So the first thing is like figuring out, do you want to go private or do you want to go insurance? I would just encourage people to just go private, because that way you're just going to save a lot of headaches. You're not going to have to jump through rings of fire and all this other stuff. The second thing is you want to make sure that you're running like a complete, ask for like the most complete lab panel that they can give you. It's usually going to have metabolic markers, thyroid, sex hormones, cardiac, and lipids. So you want to get all these other things. Because usually they'll just run metabolic markers, and they might run some lipids like cholesterol, but they won't run detailed sex hormone panels, or they won't run detailed thyroid panels. All of these things, it's like if you only ran some of these things, it's like having 100-piece jigsaw puzzle and you only have 50 of the pieces. And then you're like tasked to put the puzzle together. Well, 50 pieces are missing. How are you meant to put a 100-piece puzzle together when it's 50 pieces missing? That's exactly what it's like when you get incomplete blood work done. So I always tell people just go all in at least once a year to know exactly what's happening. When it comes to analysis and testing, this has been the area that I found quite interesting, in the sense that I have not come across a lot of people that do what I do to the extent that I do it. So there's a lot of clinics, there's a lot of, I sort of almost call them like legalized steroid mills. They're basically like longevity clinics, and they just get you on a cocktail of TRT stuff with all these other things. And it's just a whole bunch of stuff. And they don't really give you any dietary, like accurate dietary guidance. It's here's your bunch of supplements and prescriptions. Go take the stuff. Now, obviously, that's at least a start point for people, but it's not common to get someone that can look at the labs and then engineer like your diet and everything else around that too. So I would say like that's where I sort of have a unique skill set. But you can go to a lot of longevity clinics. They'll have practicing physicians. There might be like an endocrinologist or something like that. And they can give you feedback on these things and at least give you like a rough indication of where you're at with stuff, and maybe give you like a basic supplementation list.
When you say supplementation list, these are vitamins and
Yeah,
supplements that somebody
anything
would
and
take.
everything. Yeah.
Okay.
So it would be like vitamins, minerals, herbal supplements. Like let's say, for example, if someone's got some thyroid dysregulation or some the testosterone's low or whatever, and they don't want to do TRT, there'll be different herbal supplements and different vitamins that they could use to kind of help boost things up. So they basically give you like a plan. Supplementation, again, the diet part, that's really what I do. I find that that's actually a big part of it, is like the nutrition. If you can get the nutrition down, everything changes. It really improves all the other stuff. Like supplementation is literally supplementary to everything else. But most people will put a big emphasis on that. But it's, dude, the supplement industry in America is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and most people are still sick. If these things were the only thing that was required to get you truly healthy, then everyone would be super healthy. But they're not, because it's more than that. It's like you said, it's training, it's sleep, it's stress management, it's mindset, it is diet. And so in terms of the blood work stuff, I would say that's going to be a place to begin with that. I would say beyond that, there are things like food sensitivity tests that people can run. That would be something for you, for example. So there's a brand called Everlywell, and they have a food sensitivity test. And basically, it just gives you an indication of like your sensitivity to certain trigger foods. Because one of the challenges, man, is like if someone gives you a diet, but it's full of like rice or full of stuff that's triggering you, you'll feel terrible. You will not feel good. And so you need to factor in food sensitivities. And if you get the hair mineral test done too, you then know what foods you need to add in based on the things you're missing. Because like if you're getting a sweet tooth or a craving or certain triggers like that, usually it's something that is missing. And it's like the brain doesn't really know how to interpret that signal properly. And if we can pinpoint what it is, we can add those things in. And very often, it's not like the cravings go away completely, but they're much more quiet. They're not as pronounced. They're not as aggressive. And usually people can control them a lot more. And so I would say those are going to be the first areas to begin. When it comes to like a diet plan, a protocol, I usually tell people, and one of the things I've seen, man, is it is so individualized. You know, like I've had a range of students and they eat very differently. You know, like a lot of people in the health space, a lot of nutritionists and dietitians, they will be quite dogmatic. So they have their own personal preference and they basically sort of superimpose it onto people. I've been plant-based for 11 years, but I have many students that I have one guy that almost does like I don't want to say it's a carnivore diet because it's not, but it's like a low allergen sort of meat-based. Basically, it's a sort of hybrid approach to really like basically reduce all this inflammation he's been getting in his gut because he was getting a ton of issues. I mean, literally like blood in his stool. And going through this process with him, we would use like a lot of dark berries, royal jelly, manuka honey, different types of like quality meats like bone broth. There's some other things in there as well, but it's a complete opposite to what I do. You know, so my whole thing is like it is very individualized, and I do find that if someone's got digestive issues, you fix that, and often a lot of the other stuff resolves itself. So it's one of the cool things about the body is it's not like, you know, you have an issue here, you have an issue here, you have an issue here, and you've got to like individually like try and fix each thing, and you're spending all day just trying to solve problems. Normally, there's like one foundational problem, and if you can solve that pull that lever and solve that one thing, it usually improves everything else to some degree. So, and then what happens, this is the mindset component. When you start to notice the positive changes, it almost becomes like a self-fueling system, man, where, you know, you sort of mentioned like you like to eat out a bit and sort of socialize and have the desserts and all these things. And I used to be like a massive foodie. I mean, dude, like I was the guy that would eat like kind of clean all week and then have like these refeed meals, like these cheat meals, and I just go to town, man. I'd be like eating massive portions of stuff, just anything you can think of, man. I was like all in. And what I found was that as I started to get, as I got through my 30s, and I noticed that whenever I cleaned my diet up, and I would notice like my anxiety would go down and my mood would improve over time. And I would just get to this place where I felt really good. Like I felt in control. I felt calm. My skin was really clear. I looked really good in the mirror. I look at myself and I'm like, damn, like I got no bloating. There's no water retention. I got like veins up my abs and stuff. And I'm not even trying to diet. Like I'm not going crazy. And I'm like, this is freaking amazing, man. Like, damn. So then that becomes almost like the reward itself. Like, so for me, then it's much easier for me to go, oh no, I'll skip on that dessert, you know, I'm good. And I genuinely mean it because now I'm thinking to myself, I walk myself through the times that I eat that bread or whatever it is and I get bloated and I feel lousy. And I ask myself, do I want to feel that way again? Because I'm about to feel that way if I do this thing right now. And then I think to myself about a way that I felt when I made the better decision. Like, how did I feel that day where I didn't eat all that stuff and I felt like really good, especially the next day? That's what I tell people. Don't just focus on your bloating and digestive discomfort on the day. What you'll often notice is when you wake up the next morning, that heavy feeling, like that lethargic feeling and that low mood, that's often brain inflammation from the inflammation from the day before. And dude, I lived that life for 10 years in my teens, and it was the worst period of my life ever. And I never want to feel that again. And so my mentality, my mindset around it now is like, what is going to help me feel the best? And obviously, one of the other components to this is this is a good tactical component for you. So finding healthier upgrades for some of the foods that you do love. So it's not like I'm just sitting there eating like nothing but kale all day and I'm like, I will never touch it, you know, a donut again in my life. What I do instead is I find better option. So a good example is there's a brand based out of Australia called Macro Mike. And the guy actually get this, the guy created this brand because he got digestive issues. And it's basically like protein powders, amino acids, stuff like that, but it's healthy baking mixes. So there's like a triple chocolate brownie bake. There's a salted caramel cookie one. There's a white chocolate macadamia cookie, and they're in powder. So you mix water in it and you cook this stuff. We eat them every day. So, but the thing is it's lower in calories, it's higher in protein, it doesn't have all the inflammatory stuff that a lot of the standard stuff has. So the point is that you don't have to necessarily even remove things from your diet. You need to find a better alternative. And so I actually tell people to do that. I'm like, look, stop trying to fight yourself. Stop trying to deprive yourself. Stop trying to abstain from the thing you love. Let's find a better alternative for that thing you love. Because then it doesn't feel like a diet. That's
So
why what's that?
all right, finish your thought, and then I have something I want to
Yeah.
say.
That's why the when I do this stuff, and especially for me, I don't even feel like I'm on a diet because I get to have after dinner tonight, I'm making like a little bowl of like what's like chocolate soft serve ice cream, and I put a little bit of this like healthy cereal on top, and it's got protein, it's got like healthy like flours in it. It's sweetened with monk fruit, so it's got like half the calories of like something normal ice cream. I feel light. It's good for me. My digestion feels good, and I get to have that sweet thing every night after dinner. And it's like it's one of those things where when you find those types of solutions, that's when you really like, okay, this is sustainable. And that's always been my goal at this point now, man. Like I don't think people abstaining from things and fighting themselves is the way to win that war. It's not. I mean, most people will relapse. Most people will go backwards. And so rather than trying to abstain, fight, let's find healthier upgrades. I call them bridging tools. So there's a lot of them. I mean, another example is if someone's drinking like soda, right? Obviously, that's not a lot of people, I think, that are even a little bit health conscious really drink much soda at this point. But like Zevia soda waters, for example, Zevia has no calories, natural flavors, and they're sweetened with stevia. So you can have your soda get the same experience with no calories. Or, another example is um, if you use like monk fruit sweetener um, with like baking. So if your wife loves to bake stuff, rather than adding brown sugar or whatever sugar they add monk fruit sweetener. You've basically just cut out a ton of calories and massively reduce that glycemic spike that you'd get from the sugar. So you're not going to get that fog, and that's a lot of what drives ADHD, by the way. So a lot of the sugar and a lot of these processed things, I think, are what actually are driving a lot of the learning disabilities and ADHD type stuff. So if you improve those things, remember, food's like software. So that way, not only are you like enhancing your chemistry, but like your kids. So yeah, anyway, that's kind of what I wanted to
Yeah,
mention.
yeah, it's interesting because a lot of times when we're stressed out, some of us we like to eat, and it sounds like if you understand what foods you're sensitive to based upon blood work, based upon some of these studies, you can eat healthier, which will make maybe you wouldn't be as stressed. Maybe we'll get rid of some of the mental health stuff, get rid of some of
Yeah.
the cravings, which makes it easier to do all the things you want to do, makes it easier to sleep and function, and then ultimately be able to work, live, work out,
Mhm. Yep.
function at a much higher level, which then allows you in turn to get better workouts, which is where I want the next part of this
Yeah.
conversation to go. And
You get it.
listen,
That was perfect, dude. What you just said there is exactly what this is.
yeah, and then you and I can sit here for another hour and talk. So I think what we'll do is we'll
Yeah.
we'll have you back on the show
Oh, I love it, man. I
another
love it.
time. But
Yeah.
let's just close
Workouts,
it out with tying it all together with
training.
workouts,
Yeah.
right? We'll talk about workouts and then
Hmm.
let people know how they can get in contact with you.
Yeah.
And then we'll have you back on again and we'll continue
I
the
love it.
conversation. I'm going to try to
Absolutely.
get some of this stuff done for myself, and maybe we could
Yeah.
talk
Yeah.
about that stuff too.
Yeah. Yeah. So the workout component is an important component. I think, we've spent a lot of the conversation talking about nutrition and chemistry and blood work and all these things. But you will find that the training component, the workout component is, I find very, very important, especially for guys like you and I, business owners, operators, people that have a lot of pressure. From a mindset perspective, I tell people like you've got to move your body every day. You don't have to weight train every day, but you need to move your body every day. So what I say when I say move your body, I mean every day you need to be walking in some capacity. So I will get all my students to basically try to hit 15 to 20,000 steps per day. I'll often get my guys to get a standing desk with a treadmill. So they get a standing desk, little treadmill. That way they can be on their calls, they can be doing their work, and they hit like 15,000 steps without even thinking about it. And that is a massive fat loss tool. I cannot understate how powerful that is for overall health and weight loss. So movement every day, whether it be walking, going for a little run, maybe doing some light yoga or something. But then I would say with resistance training, like weight training, I would be doing that anywhere between like 3 and 5 times per week. And it just depends on like your expertise. If you're a beginner or you're untrained, 3 times is more than enough. And in between those days, you're walking. So you might do like a full body session Monday, Wednesday, Saturday, and between you're getting 15 to 20,000 steps. Or if you're doing like a 4 day session, it would usually be maybe like upper body, lower body, upper body, lower body. So when it comes to training, what I try and do is I use a couple of principles because a lot of my guys obviously travel. Now, sometimes you'll be at a hotel that will have a good gym. Sometimes you don't know what you're going into. So I always take a set of powerlifting loop tension bands with me. So if you go to Amazon and search powerlifting loop tension bands, the pack of these bands, right? They're in a big loop and there's different tensions. There's like a big thick blue one. There's a thinner yellow one. You can get a really, really good full body workout using these tension bands in your hotel room. When we were in New Zealand for 3 months visiting my family, I was like on these rugged East Coast beaches, like with my bands, like pumping a workout out, like with the sun coming up. And it allows you to maintain your habits. Because that's the thing, like you do not want to have your head down, be doing like 75 hard, perfect at home, and then got a bunch of travel coming up and you don't train for like 2 weeks. Like that's not going to be good for like your psychology or your health. And so what I tell people is the tension bands are what you would take when you're on the road. Obviously, if the hotels have a gym, great. And I typically focus on resistance training using bigger muscle groups. I tell people, think about it from an ROI perspective, like a return on investment. The bigger the muscle trained, the more of a metabolic effect it creates. So that's why leg training is so kind of exhausting for people because your legs, your quads are a big muscle group. It creates a big metabolic effect. But by metabolic, I mean fat burning, and it helps with blood glucose regulation and muscle building. So my whole goal is to try and put on as much muscle mass in students in their legs and back as possible because those are like the big muscle groups. When you do that, you essentially raise the person's metabolism. So what I would say is if you're thinking about the way you structure your training, if it's, I would be saying leg training, at least, try and get it 2 times a week, try and do back training like twice a week, which basically mean like you'd be doing like upper body, upper body, lower body, or something like that. Or you might do like a push pull legs type split. I have a gym at home that I train into. So like if I'm under time crunch and I'm like, man, I ain't even got the time to like drive to the gym, do all the stuff. I'll have my home gym set up. I would tell any guy it's a very good investment to get a decent home gym setup. Clearing out a spare room, deck it out like a man cave, make it kind of cool, put some, stuff on the walls. I put some like LED lights in there and make it fun and throw like an adjustable bench, adjustable dumbbells, get yourself like a cable stack. And if between a cable stack, some squat stands, some adjustable dumbbells and an adjustable bench, like you could get a good workout in there, man. And I would say like that would be like your home setup when you're under a time crunch, when you've got on that deadline, but you've got to get your training in. Then I would say obviously have a gym membership. And that's going to be where you go and like hit the machines and use all the other stuff. I I love using techniques like rest pauses and like drop sets, for example, and supersets. So these are the three things. I'll kind of give you some tactics. So supersets are kind of like when you combine two exercises together. So let's say, for example, like today I was doing a dip and I was supersetting it with like a tricep push down. So basically I'm doing two exercises back to back to get as much like work done in a smaller amount of time. Like I want to get in there and I want to get a lot done, but I don't want to spend 2 hours in the gym. That's not practical. A lot of fitness guys, 20-year-old fitness guys that don't have kids and a wife and anything, they could spend all day in the gym if they wanted. Like for the average person, especially guys like us, it's like 40 to 60 minutes. Like that's kind of like the window. I feel like anything more than 60, and you're just like, it's almost becoming inefficient at that point. And so I even model this. And so I superset stuff to get things done faster. I'll do rest pauses where basically I'm pushing out a certain amount of reps where I would normally like get to the point and I would stop. And I do stop for about 10 seconds. I breathe and then I'll push out like another 2 to 4 reps. That little extra piece at the end of the set creates a really good mechanical overload. And so it's another principle of how can we create maximum stimulus in a very small window of time. So I would do drop sets, rest pauses, and supersets. But I think, man, like again, the biggest needle moving things are going to be resistance training 3 to 5 times a week, probably 30 to 60 minutes, training big muscle groups using rest pauses and supersets, and every day 15 to 20,000 steps with a standing desk and a treadmill, and make some of those steps outside in the sun. Obviously coming into, we're in spring right now, right, bro? And like obviously moving into summer, maximize that fact. Get outside, walk in the sun, walk your dog, walk with your wife. One of the things I love is when I tell this to my people, I'll often see them taking pictures where they're walking with their family. And I really think that's a good thing. And by the way, the walking, the treadmill walking inside, the walking after meals is very, very good for digestion. So if you have digestive issues, walking more and sitting less, really good for digestion. So, dude, there's a lot with that. But I do think, and the point I wanted to make at the start was the training, it has to be like a pressure release valve. I tell guys, we're all kind of like human Instapots, like an Instapot, and you got a little steam valve. And like when it's cooking, the steam kind of shoots out the valve to keep the pressure inside from like exploding stew everywhere. And so people are like that, but the valve is like sealed shut. So and when they explode, that's like them having going flying into a rage. It's like them like binge eating, stress eating, all the things we see people do because the pressure built up too much. There was no outlet, and so the pressure just kind of discharges anywhere. I tell my guys, I'm like, you need to train this as a pressure release valve. So you need to physically push out that energy to bring that internal energy back down to baseline. That's where you're calm. And so like
And then rest and recovery also, right?
yeah, absolutely. So the sleep component, like you mentioned, is really important. That's why I don't train every day. That's why I'm saying if you maybe even train every second day, walking between. If you have access to things like massage and chiropractic and nutrient IVs and different things, like that's all kind of useful
Cold
stuff.
cold plunge, hot tub, sauna, steam
Yep,
room,
all of
right?
that.
All that stuff.
I even tell people the ultimate stack, in my opinion, is training, workout, and then jump in the sauna for 20 minutes if you can, and then jump in cold for 3 minutes. So if you did workout, sauna, cold, and then let your body just kind of warm itself back up, that is like
I do workout, cold plunge,
yeah,
hot tub to warm up, then steam room
yeah.
or sauna, and then or steam room then sauna. It's probably
I
two.
think all of that stuff is really important. Like most people, and as you know, especially as you age, you can't just like destroy your body like you used to in your 20s. So you need that recovery time. You need that time where you're sort of working on letting your state recover. For me, the big part is the sleep. I find that when you get the sleep dialed in, it's something even as simple as getting like an Oura ring and looking at your metrics, and you can fine tune things off that. Just to kind of quickly give you one little last nugget before we wrap up. Like most people, if they eat really close to bedtime, it keeps their resting heart rate elevated, and that stops you from getting deeper sleep.
Mhm.
So sometimes it's the timing of your food. I've had people play with that where I've had a guy who was eating like right before he went to bed because he was a black belt martial arts guy. He'd do his classes at night. He would finish and then he'd have this massive meal and then go straight to bed. And his heart rate was like pretty high. And I was like, we need to figure this out. Got him to reduce down pull the time back, drops in heart rate. And I'm actually testing that on a student right now. So you can see drops in heart rate, which brings down body temperature, which improves REM and deep sleep by adjusting the timing of your food. So it's one of those things, man, where it's a synergy. It's not just supplements. It's not just like TRT or peptides or something. It's not just workouts. It's like an equation of all of these things, but it doesn't also have to be super complicated too. Like a lot.
There's a roadmap,
Yeah.
and it's not just throwing stuff against the wall. There's actually a plan to follow if we
Yep.
want to follow it. You have sort of tapped into that roadmap and have created a roadmap and will create personalized roadmaps for
Yep.
people if they want. I think this was awesome, man. And I would definitely have
Thank
you
you,
back
man.
on
Yeah.
because there's so much more that we could talk about.
I know.
So we'll have you
Yeah.
back on another time, and kind of we'll continue on with some of these topics.
Absolutely.
If people wanted to get in contact with you
Yeah.
to do some of this stuff, what's the
Mhm.
best way? What's your email address, or what's the best way to
So,
get?
so I would say like the best way, if they find me on Facebook, Fraser Bayley, FraserBayley. If they find me on Facebook or on Instagram at Fraser Bayley, um, email is fraser@veguplife.com. But obviously, if they connect with me on social media, but I wanted to say, this has been an honor. It's been a pleasure. I know it's probably felt like drinking from a fire hose, but this is you can tell I'm very passionate about this stuff, and the reason is because my life was so painful early on. Man, it was really bad. And my digestive issues were terrible, my mood was terrible, I was tired all the time, and I felt like now that I've come to this point where I've got this level of health, I can see what most people are missing. And it's like you want that for people. You're like, man, if you are so close to feeling so much better if you just did these things. And it lies in a lot of the discussion that we had today, brother. So I just wanted to
Love
say
it, man.
thank you,
You're
man.
doing some really cool things. You're having major impact on people, and I love to hear it. I look forward to talking to you more. So thanks so much for being on here today.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.